right, I'm going to start up. The first thing I want to do is show you this, and I've got a hard copy that I'm going to hang out there too. Doug Tabbitt has sent me this. This is a thing about that the internship positions available at Data Dimensions. All right, and the only thing that you probably would worry about is they ask for both C# and C++ experience, and we don't teach C++ here. But I wouldn't worry about that. I really and truly wouldn't, because you do have Java experience. All right, so I'm going to put this out there. Like I said, it's from Doug. The individual will assist in the software development team with documentation development and testing of software components and releases. Again, some of you have already talked to me about this. If you are interested, please get me a resume and cover letter right away, because they want to fill this, because they want to start, and there's probably enough work for anywhere from 2 to 5 people. All right, he didn't know. The stuff that's down at the bottom here, I wouldn't worry about this. It says you must be able to lift 25 pounds, except this is just a general form that they have for their employees. But like I said, I've got it right here, and I'm going to hang it up in just a couple minutes, so it will be right over there. So again, if you're interested in it, it's $10 an hour, which is $10 an hour. All right, which is $10 an hour more than you get if you're doing a free internship. All right, and I think at least they'll try to work around your hours as best they can. All right, I don't think they're going to want interns in that place like at 2 in the morning till 7 in the morning when there's no one there, basically. So, but I don't know. You'd have to talk to him about that. All right. The other thing is going back, and I can close this. I know Teresa asked, and a couple other people might have wondered about this too. This is my site. It's getting there. I'm still a little bit behind, but if you noticed right here in the book, they had that thing that said BAM on it. Well, again, I sent an email to Pact Publishing, who creates this book. They didn't answer. I sent them another strongly worded email, not mean, but just more strongly worded. Say, hey, I'm teaching this, I'm using your book, I'd like to continue to use your books, but I need the source code. And they wrote back, there is no source code. And I thought, that kind of sounds like bull. All right, somebody had to create some source code someplace. So I found the author's site, and he did have a contact form on there, so I sent him an email yesterday, Eric Tigler. And I said, hey, I'm using your book. I think the class likes the book. They like the fact that it's a fairly interactive book. But for purity's sake, basically, I said, could you either send me the source code, or if you can't do that, you at least have the folder with the images in it, so we can have the same images that you have. So ideally, our site will look more like yours, so we're just not using the stock images. I sent it out yesterday morning. He has not gotten back to me. All right. This one right here, this image, I know it's not the one in the book. All right, but this is the one, I think it's at the end of chapter 4 that they asked you to do. I don't really remember. But what it is I literally went out, and you've all seen this kind of stuff before. I went out to Google Images, and literally I typed in, BAM, logo. Now, you may or may not be aware of this, but remember, what was the one that closed? Was it Barnes & Noble is still open and Borders closed, right? Isn't that the way it is? Well, Borders didn't really close. All right, they won't say this, but they became Books A Million, which is BAM. That Books A Million that is in the mall, that right in the Janesville Mall right now, which may close with no pennies being there. But that particular Books A Million, I believe, because they got a lot of overstock, and they'll have, if you look in there, some Borders books. All right, but I grabbed this one. I didn't know which one was the best. Probably should have grabbed that one. It might have been a little better color-wise, but I just grabbed that one right there. All right, I grabbed it, saved it, went out to makeathumbnail.com, all right, and literally went in and made it a 100 by 100 JPEG file. Then I went into the C drive. This is on mine, XAMPP, HTDocs, Joomla. I went into images, and I literally just dropped it in there and used it that way. Now, if you want to do that, fine. If you want to use your own image, fine. If you want to try to create one, fine. So mine is both, both that BAM one is there, okay, the one you just saw, and my Corbo one is there, the one that I created. And they're both out there if you want to use them. I'm sure you can create something better, all right, but they're both out there if you do want to use them. All right, I've literally got them. What I did was, in the folder for this class, that's not the one I want, that's the one I want. In the folder for this class, there, the folder that had the 9/2 date on it. There's the BAM. There's the Corba, and that's the article I mentioned that very simply tells you how to use Pixlr. So that stuff's out there. All right. So if you want that, feel free. Go ahead. If you don't, you want to do your own, that's fine also. All right. Last time we'd almost finished the chapter. I guess when I looked at this, I didn't realize how close we were to the end of the chapter. So I'm just going to take a few minutes and finish the end of this chapter. So we were on about page 131. And as I mentioned to you, I'm still in the process of trying to get my site up to speed. I just showed it to you. It's nothing worth writing home about or whatever, but it's getting there. All right? So that's mine right now. Yes. Is that the book for this class? How many people don't have the book for this class? All right. All right. What I'll do is as soon as I get done, so I don't forget to do it, I'm going to walk over to the bookstore and check, and if they say they don't have it, then I'm going to ask them if they know what the hell's going on, and if they don't know what the hell's going on, I know that'd be amazing, but if they don't know what's going on, then I'll do a count again and make sure I know how many people. I'll contact the publishing company myself and see if we can get them to immediately send out 3, 4, or 5 of them. Remember, you do have, everybody please remember, I did put, Mike, there is a PDF of it out there. Yeah, there should be at least. All right, on the P drive, there should be a PDF of the book out there. All right, which is much better than having nothing. So again, we left off here. I'm going to take for granted that you all understand how to rename a category. Again, they tell you to go into Content, Category Manager, and when the screen comes up, you just change the title. All right? Again, I don't think that's a big thing. And as we talked about last time, don't even put anything in for the alias. It'll be put in there for you automatically. All right? So again, as always, the author says, oh, go back in and change a bunch of them and see what happened. Okay. Now, the next thing that he mentions here, and this is up on page 133 on the bottom of the page, is the author says, hey, there's a lot of different category things that you can play with on here. So he spends a couple pages here showing you some of the options. All right. So he gets in and he talks about how you can change the title, which he just showed you. The alias, which I mentioned, always leave it blank because it'll be filled in for you. Then on the next page, he explains some of the other stuff that exists in here on 134, 135, and 136. The description, as it says, you can enter a short and format a short descriptive text. That's what they had for the Corba stuff. You don't have to do that. Again, they're displayed at the top of the page. If you followed along in the instruction that was in the book, ours we had just collectors of really bad art. So the parent, hopefully by now everybody gets this. When you create a category, and for parent you have no parent, it's top level. All right, which means if you're going to, basically you're going to stick it either it'll be up here, which is what they told us to do with the contact info, or it'll be down here, which is what we did with the news, the art lectures, and the meeting. So it'll be at one or the other. All right. Status, we've talked about this before. As the author mentions, it can be either published, which means it's visible, or unpublished. Now remember, even if it's published, if you haven't linked up to it yet, it's not going to show. But as soon as you do that, then it will. And again, we've talked a little bit about archiving. They'll mention that in a later chapter. And this is mainly important for those of you who may be eventually doing your own site or a site for somebody, and you ask them if they want that done in Joomla. All right, they probably want an archive section. Okay. I might bring this up to the people from Big Brothers Big Sisters if they contact me this year and say that they want to have somebody work on the site again. Just say, do you ever consider putting it into a content management system? Which they may or may not. They might say, no, we're happy with it the way it is, which is fine. Access we're going to get to, as it says in Chapter 9. If you do have an access modifier in there of public, that means anybody and everybody can look at it. All right, that's stuff you want anybody to be able to see, and many sites have that. They've got a certain amount of free stuff. They also might have a certain amount of stuff that you have to be registered in order to be able to see it. All right, you can go and do a lot of work even on Udemy if you're not logged in, but they're probably not going to let you set, they're not going to give you a class even if it's free unless you're logged in and have an account. In the same way with a thing like Udemy, you're not going to get their special offers. Typically, like they've got a lot of 90% off stuff in September. You're not going to get a lot of that stuff unless you're a registered user. Yes. Yeah, but it's even right. But yes, you typically have to register, but it's even more than that, Mark. The question was, is that like a site where you go on, you got a blog, and anybody can read it, but you can't comment unless you're registered? Yes, but when you think about it, even if you go on to Amazon, you're not signed in typically. But as soon as you start putting stuff in your cart, if you want to buy it, you have to sign in, and that's their way of registering you, right? Or making sure you're registered, because they're not going to be able, they're not going to send it out to not knowing who it is and not having a credit card or something online. It's the same kind of an idea. But again, in many sites, a lot of the other things that they'll do. Remember the stuff that we're looking at in here when we're doing this? Read more. What you might do is you might make that available, the whole thing, but with the read more, you can set it up so if they click on there, it says, oh, you have to be registered to see that extra material. No, not necessarily. No, not at all. Yes. Yes. Sure. Yeah, there are sites like that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Right. Right. But still, when you look at it, even if you say you don't want to register, if you check out and you have to provide credit information, they're going to track you. Even if you don't officially register, that's going to put you in their database. That will. All right. Yeah. Yes. Yes. This stuff is remembered. Yeah. And in fact, the way that a lot of times Amazon will do it, you've got your choice that you can go through PayPal or not through PayPal. So if you go through PayPal, you need a PayPal account, of course. And if you don't, and if I buy something, what they'll do is they'll say, oh, they'll recognize me and they'll say, do you want to use this charge card? And it just shows the last 4 digits, type of an idea. Even that's kind of scary. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I've been able to do that. Now, yeah, you're right. It depends. But it's funny because what I would do is if I ever wanted to get to that point is my MasterCard got breached a couple years ago, and they have both of them, my new one and my old one. But if I wanted to, I could remove my new one and I'd just leave the old one in there. And then they keep asking if I want to use that one. I would never want to because the card's not active anymore anyway. I couldn't even use it. I always take the places like that. It scares me now, and I don't know if any of you are in this situation, but there was an article on the news the other night that the average person today who's gone to school now has more school loan debt than they do credit debt. Well, that's not so bad. The average person, if you don't know this, anybody know what the average person's credit debt is right now? It's half that. It's 15. That's just for your credit cards. That's not buying a car or anything. That's just credit card debt. The average person is $15,000. And they've figured it out. I think it was if you pay just the minimal amount, literally you could pay to almost till you're dead. Yeah. And that's what they're counting on. Sure. Yeah, they love people like that. And it's funny because I had a MasterCard when I first got one. They okayed me for $500. I mean, I was like early 20s. 2 months later, they upped it to $2,000. 4 months after that, they upped it to 10 grand. I never asked them to do anything. Then I started getting these things. You're such a good customer. We want to give you a gold card. And I'm like 20, 21, 22 years old. But I hardly ever bought anything. I never took any of that stuff. That's the and if you haven't heard that either, that's also the stuff you should be shredding when you get it and not just throwing it out. All right. But there's other things that when we get into chapter 9, there's not just public and registered. So we'll get into those too. All right. The language again, the last appendix in here talks about if you wanted to do a bilingual site. All right. As far as the options, again, notice in here they talk about alternative layout. It says a feature that lets you select a custom layout for the current category, provided the selected template allows for custom layouts. Some of the stuff, if you go and you download a free template, just so you know, with some of it you can make drastic changes to a free template. Other ones, you're kind of stuck with what you've got as far as the color scheme, etc. You won't have a lot of changes. So that's what they're getting to then. All right. Image, as it says, it affects how overview pages of category contents are displayed. Notes, I don't know if you know this or not, but for instance, if I were to create a PowerPoint presentation, maybe you've done this too. PowerPoint, they typically have a little thing that's down at the bottom. It's called Notes, where it doesn't show on the screen or anything, but if I might jot something down on there, if I say, make sure you tell the class about this when you get to the slide type of an idea. You can do the same thing in here. All right. Meta, and the author talks about this, and we've talked about it a little bit earlier, but I just want to mention this to you, and that is there's a lot of, and Mike, feel free to weigh in on this, Mike W. But there's a lot of thought on this right now as far as whether meta tags are really even being used anymore for search engine optimization. That people have said in the past that when you put meta tags in there, that's one of the things that when a thing like Google comes through and spiders your website, it looks at the meta tags, and then it looks at the pages in your site to see if indeed the pages in your site are reflective of what's in those meta tags. And that's one of their reasonableness and consistency types of checks. And ideally, if you've got the right meta keywords in there and it spiders through, that'll help you with your search engine ranking. All right, that said, there are also articles out there you can find on the web right now that says they don't really use that stuff anymore. But Google has tried for years to be very secretive about the way that they do their search engine their ranking and stuff. I still say that I believe that money talks. And that if you're a big site, you've got bucks, you'll find a way to either get on the first page or darn close to it. Yeah. Right. 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 Yeah. So to just kind of paraphrase what Mike just said there, he's right. Build it the right way. And as the saying goes, let the chips fall. But going along with that, again, I've mentioned this before, and it's topical because it's a week from today, that I remember that there was an article online that after 9/11 happened, all the sites that were putting 9/11 in their meta tags, and there were all these sites that had nothing to do with anything 9/11. They were putting it in there, though. And there was an article out there about that Google was getting really peeved that people were doing that kind of stuff. But you could say people were trying to be topical. You know, you can rationalize anything if you try hard enough. Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, and there's a big to-do right now in Rockford that they want to create a 9/11 memorial. I have no problem with it. It's going to be $500,000. I have a problem depending on who's paying for it, how it's being paid for, just because of the fact I think those people, you know, they were heroes, the people who went in there. All right, the ones who died, especially the firefighters, etc. But I never heard of a firefighter from Rockford being one of the people who went in there. That's why I didn't understand the correlation. And if somebody explained it to me and it made sense, I have no problem with it whatsoever. Oh yeah, sure. And that's what I'm saying. If that's the case, if that's the case and the federal government's paying for it, there's a part of me that says I don't mind, but if the federal government's paying for something, who's really paying for it in the end? I know. And I can't say anything bad about grants because we have two people who are in this room right now because of grants. All right, so, all right. There's author tags, there's the robots tag, the permissions, again, we're going to talk about that stuff as we go on. And the last thing that's discussed in the chapter here is, I mentioned this at the beginning of the chapter, is they talk about building a site that has no categories in it whatsoever. And what the author gets to here is talking about, I guess the example that they give, or for an example, the author says here, imagine that you had a yoga site, and that was going to be the site. A home page, an about yoga, an about me, a scheduled class, and a contact class. You might update these pages intermittently, especially the schedules page, but there'd be a good chance once you created that site, it would never change. All right? That said, I don't agree with that either. Because when people say, oh yeah, just make this for me, it's never going to change. It's never going to change until you have it made for them. And then it will change. All right? But the author says if you're going to do this, really what you could do is put everything under, you could put the main page under uncategorized and put some other things underneath that. And that's all they talk about. They give another example, a real simple example for a site, for a company site, a one-man company. And they give another one where they say if you were going to do a webinar, or if you, and there's another one in here where they talk about if you were going to do like a government meeting. So something very simple. Something also possibly that's temporal. In other words, it's time-based. You might do this for a web builder seminar and throw something out there that was real cheap, down and dirty, knowing that it was going to be in a month, and after the month you'd probably get rid of it anyway, type of an idea. All right, and the author says if you're going to do that, says you can skip steps. Create the uncategorized content pages and add your menu links. That's basically all there is to it. All right. And that's pretty much how he ends the chapter here. All right. So again, as saying, we talked about every website requires planning. And again, the author even mentioned if you do start it, for example, with something as simple as putting it on a napkin. All right. And then transferring it into Joomla. As it says, first identify the different Joomla content elements in it. All right, and realize that it's a first pass, and it might change. All right. In the next chapter, as it says, we'll jump from organization into creating content. Since you are here, and I wanted to go over this earlier anyway, it's the wrong page. Take about 5 minutes and just go over this. This is the first appendix in the book. The appendix is about 10 pages long. Much of the stuff that's in here is just common sense. So I don't want to go over the stuff that's just common sense. All right. It's interesting because I was talking with Zane. I know that he was working with Mike W. and a few other people on this, but he's been looking at that gifts site, that men's shelter site. And it looks as though they may already have a web host, but the web host they have is fairly expensive. All right. Again, when they say choosing a web host that meets security requirements, just remember one thing. There are actually really good web hosts up there that have a good uptime, etc., that are fairly cheap. There are also some that are fairly cheap that you're still overpaying. And there's also some that are out there that are not that cheap, but they have security hosts. So the idea is do a lot of looking around. All right? And I don't think that's anything new. Okay. All right, download from reliable sources. Does that make sense? You know, again, I don't know about you guys, but even the stuff that gets through our spam filter here, I'm getting at least 30 to 50 things that are getting hit by our spam filter are catching per day. But I'm still getting these things. Hey Jeff, click here, and it's, you know, there's just a link on it. Yeah, I'm going to do that. You know, and you look at the name that's in there, and it's just some real god awful name. Or I don't know about you guys, but I still get the things. Me king of, and then some country, you know. Me need help, money tied up, you know, send $1,000, we'll get you back 10 in 2 weeks, you know. Yeah, right. Yeah. The author mentions that as an administrator of a Joomla site, you will get updates. So in other words, when Joomla 3.4 comes out, you should get an update on that, if nothing else, to your email. But I occasionally get stuff out here too, so that when I come in and I actually go into the admin side, all right, that when I go in, sometimes oh, that's neat. But when it comes up, all right, then they'll let me in, whatever. But I'll have things in there, you know, newest news type of thing. I had one the other day that had 2 or 3 different things that were sent to me in there. Haven't had this one come up before though, but whatever. Choose a safe administrator username. I chose admin because I know I'm the only one using this. But again, if you're using a quote real site, don't make it admin. Don't make it easy for somebody to guess. That's all. All right, same thing with passwords. Protecting files and directories. We're going to hit on this a lot in the because what I'm going to try to show you when we start building our PHP site is how to set stuff up. All right, what to put out there and what not to put out there, type of an idea. You know, you look in here as it says. Does everybody understand this? I've gone over this before. That read permission has the number 4 associated with it. Write has the number 2. Execute has the number 1. So notice that's a right there. That's a 6. And there's a 4 and there's a 4. So you get that value. This is you. That's whatever group you've been defined in, and that's the world. So a lot of times what you'll see for permissions is you'll see things like 711, which means that you're able to read, write, and execute anything that's in there. Everybody else can execute it, but they can't read your stuff and they can't write to your stuff. All right, if you're working with a group, it might be something like maybe even it might be 771 or it might be 741 or whatever. All right, depending. But the only thing for the public permissions that you should typically put out there, all right, you know, again, going back to what Mark was talking about before, do you give the public write permissions? Possibly, if you did have a blog or something like that, but you're not going to do it for the entire site. All right, that's why an administrator, if most people, if you start, you get an administrative job. All right, a lot of people who start, because I know people who've done this, and they made me an administrator. What do you know about it? Not a flippin' thing. But they become pretty decent pretty fast. Because they start to learn real fast who they should give permissions to and what kind of permissions they should give them. All right, so again, as they say, you can set it on a directory level. You can also set it on a file level. Right. Use extensions to secure the site. And again, notice what it says. The Joomla extension site has a special security category. Joomla is not going to put anything out there under joomla.org unless it's been pretty well tested. So, you know, before you go and you write your own code or buy something from somebody else, you might want to look at what's out there. All right. Everybody knows what CAPTCHA is, correct? You get that irritating little thing on the bottom of your screen that says type in these letters, all right, type of thing. And they're doing that, so hopefully they're not being spammed. They're hoping that a real human being is doing that. Something like that. I always love that because I don't know about you, but this one isn't bad. But a lot of times they have 2 words, and one of the words is really easy to read, and the other one's really difficult to read. So I click for another word, and now the first one that was easy to read is hard to read, and it keeps bouncing back and forth. All right. Not only have a backup ready, but be ready to back up on a regular basis. Again, what's a regular basis? We've talked about this before. You know, Mark, we would mention things like Amazon before. Amazon's going to have to back up a lot more than Blackhawk is, for example. Yeah, yeah. When you think about it, you know, the idea, the kind of the litmus test for backup is, okay, how often do I have to back up that if I lost everything right now, okay, that I could recover from it? And, you know, today's a great day with the way the weather's been. And I don't know, it doesn't look terrible out right now, and I don't know how it was when you guys came in, but I came in this morning at 5:45. It was really, really bad. That was the closest I've ever had lightning come down towards my car that I've ever seen in my life. I'm thinking, okay, I've got my foot on the rubber gas pedal. I've got a rubber thing on here, and I'm hoping, well, geez, if I do get hit, I'm hoping I'm okay. Yeah. Yeah, I believe it. All right, so as it says, there's a few great Joomla extensions for backup, but one is the Akiba backup. All right, as it says, it'll back up all the necessary files to recover your site and allow you to restore the backup file to any location. So if you want to put it someplace else, and then they go through how you can do that. I have never done that, so I'm not going to go through this. All right, and they even show you how to do a restore from there. stay informed. Again, that probably just makes sense, or at least hopefully that just makes sense, because this is the end of the chapter. But these are some of the sites, the security checklist, the security forum, just going out to the Joomla site. All right. And everybody in here, you know, I've heard Mike L talk about it, Mike W talk about it, etc. You know, if you just Google enough, when there are breaches at places, we all hear about them pretty fast today. Right, because they're starting to become the norm rather than the exception. But again, the idea is that one of the things that I was on a committee last year that was last spring that was doing a bunch of rewrite for the web developer program, and we had representatives there from every school in the state, and all of them said, please make sure you're talking about security and try to meld it into every single class that you go over. So you've had a little here. It hasn't been much, but you've had a little. So again, next Tuesday, we're going to go over Chapter 6. My hope is between next Tuesday and the first hour next Thursday, all right, that we can get through all of it. Why? Because the lady from GIFs, Zane doesn't know this. Well, he knows it if he's read his email. But she contacted me and said, I said, you know, why don't you come in? And I gave her times. Well, she picked a time that is 9 o'clock next Thursday that she wants to come in here to talk to Zane about redoing the GIF site. All right, so since she's going to be here at 9, I'm not going to say, can you reschedule? It's very hard to get with some of these people's schedules. So my hope is between the 2 hours next Tuesday and the first hour next Thursday, we'll be done with Chapter 6. All right, we're doing really well in here. You've got an hour. Hopefully you've been trying to keep up. Like I said, I am going to want to see what you've done when we get all done with this before we start on the next phase, which will be creating your own site. All right? Any questions? All right, and just so you know, because just about all of you, in fact, I think everybody in here is in the next class. In the next class, we've got about an hour's worth of talk to do to finish up Chapter 4 for the ASP.NET class. I've got your first assignment. I just have to, I think I put it on the P drive, and I've got to put it also out on Blackboard. All right, and I'll do that by the time class starts, and we will go over it. I've also created a copy for everybody in the class, a hard copy. Yes. For this class, yeah, this is what I put out there, and it's about as simple as you could get. So we just finished there, and that's right where we are. All right. And if it turns out that one or more chapters go quicker, we can move it up. I don't think any of them will take longer than this. But again, notice what it says. This says by near the end of October, so you'll have all of November, all right, and you'll have the first week or so in December. And again, what I'm going to ask is probably by around December 1st, you know, I want to look at your site. And I'll be able to look at it and say, you know, you didn't do this type of thing, and you'll still have time, but it'll be officially due the last class period. All right. Now, we're going to go through the whole book. Yes, then we're going to talk about doing your own site. Yeah, so it'll be around here, but before that time, sometime in here, I don't know when, but sometime in here, all right, near the, let's move that up. Somewhere in here, hopefully around mid-September, I'll write up some simple requirements. All right, Mike has given me some links, and I'll have those out there on how to create requirements, etc. Because you're going to create the requirements, you're going to do everything. All right, and we'll have all that stuff out there, and I'll try to put some kind of a timeline in it too. In other words, you could start on it now. Yeah, in fact, I don't know what I did. Let's see if I put that out here or not. Yes, Kelly. Well, as far as uploading it to your own server, that's what they talked about at the beginning of the book. All right, and the idea is basically you would just take the stuff that you've created and using FileZilla or something like that. But I still have to, and I'm trying to get a meeting with IT to see if we can upload it there. All right, in an ideal world, that's what we're going to be able to do. All right, well, we can take a look at it. Okay. All right, so like I said, where did I put this now? This is my mess, so there it is. Mike had given me this. Mike Wegman had given me this. So it's called requirements. So I'll tell you what. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to throw it out there right now, and I'll put it in a folder with today's date on it, which is 9/4. And he just found a bunch of sites. Here's the URLs for the sites that he found. All right, and what I did, one of the things had an attachment to it, and oops, and the other stuff that's in there. Try it again. The other stuff that's in there, if I can, boy, oh boy, close. I don't want that. There's some things that you can start thinking about as far as how to create website specifications. Again, I got the URLs out there also. And there's other ones. He just said that when I was talking about it in class, he noticed there were people that didn't seem to know what I was talking about. So one of these, the example of a website, is also got a thing in there that's a website specification. 9 or 7 pages where you can start looking at it as far as stuff that you should do, etc. I'm not going to require that you do this. I don't really care how you do it, but we're going to have you lay it out. That's the main thing. And every one of these is loading. There's one. Website security template. And there's a bunch of other ones out there also. Okay, I'm not sure why they're not loading. I don't care if you do it in Word or you do it. I mean, for example, I've had people do things like this in the past, and what some of them have done is they literally, like, to set up a site map or whatever, they've done it in a packet, even like PowerPoint, something like that, or Word where you can use art, and it can be really simple. You know, the author said you can do it on a napkin. Well, I don't want you to give me a napkin, you know. There you go. So again, there's the example of the website spec. And there's, like I said, the ones that are in here, they should be able to come up. If you can't get them up like I can't right now, again, you can always go out to the URL, because that's got where all these are, all 4 of them. And there's more in there. I'll try to add to that as we go on. All right. So that's what I had. The rest of the period is yours. So again, if you are behind on this, and I am a little bit, but if you are, please try to catch up as best you can. All right, as soon as you can.